Our vision is to build a culture of preparedness, prevention, response, and community resilience to disasters in Nigeria. Our mission is to coordinate resources towards efficient and effective disaster prevention, preparedness, mitigation, and response in Nigeria. Some of the responsibilities and functions of NEMA are listed here. We formulate policies on all activities relating to disaster management and coordinate the plans and programs for efficient and effective response to disasters at national level. We monitor the state of preparedness of all organizations or agencies which may contribute to disaster management in Nigeria. We collect emergency relief supply from local, foreign sources, including international and non-governmental agencies. We liaise with state emergency management committees established under Section 8 of our Act to assess and monitor where the distribution of relief materials to disaster victims.
For me and for many of us, the mandate that NEMA has is basically two-pronged. One is prevention of disaster. The other one is to mitigate disaster when it does happen. But it appears that, as in a lot of things, we concentrate mainly on the mitigation of disaster and leave, to a very large extent, the other side of the mandate, which is the prevention. I think in turning the page, I think it's important that we begin to look even closer, or more closely, to the issue of the area of prevention. A lot of these disasters can be prevented, and that is what NEMA is set up to do. Like the saying goes, prevention is, they say, is better than cure, and that's the area that I think we now should begin to look at. Sometimes you see incidents that have occurred over and over and over again, and you wonder why people say once bitten, twice shy. These things could have been prevented. We've had early warnings. We know the terrain. We know what's about to happen. You're giving foreknowledge of these things, but most times we wait till it happens, and that has to change. That has to change, and it also helps in reducing the kind of the money that goes towards, especially in this situation where we have scarce resources in the country, that goes towards trying to prevent, or rather trying to cure or mitigate something that could have been avoided in the first place. Flooding, as has been observed, is a perennial problem in Nigeria. It's year in, year out. A lot of this flooding can be prevented or at least reduced. I'm glad to hear that you do a lot of training in terms of what needs to be done, because manpower is also very important. It's not just about the money, but if you have the money and you throw it and you don't know what to do with it, I don't know how long or how regular the training is, because situations continue to evolve, technology continues to evolve. And I think it's important that we make that training as regular as you can. And I'm also glad you have which you talked about very briefly. I'd like to know more about that. Your National Emergency Operations Center. I think that's also very, 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 very key. The most important thing is for us to know what your challenges are. And I'm glad you got to it at the end of the day, to know how you do business, how it works, and then what are these challenges, how can we optimize your capacity and allow you fulfill your mandate fully. You've talked about funding. I'm sure we expected to hear about that, because I've been hearing about it from the time I was the Speaker of the House. Funding. For what you do, a lot of money is required, both in terms of technological advancement and in terms of relief materials and in terms of just putting different things in place. But then Nigeria is such a place where, the resources, and like in any other country, resources are limited and they have to be prioritized. I would think it's time we started looking outside the outside the box, or thinking outside the box, and look for more creative ways to fund NEMA. That's not to say there will not be the normal funding that from the budget cycle. And one of those ways, I believe, and I think he's touched on it, the Deputy Chief of Staff has touched on it to an extent, is what is the role of the state? How do they come in? Do we tweak the law, amend the legislation to be clear to the extent that maybe perhaps the states form a model of some kind of insurance scheme where the states pay into the purse some kind of counterpart funding? Because after all, these disasters occur in states. There's no land called federal government. The states, every disaster that you talk about is local. And so it's time we start thinking about what exactly we want the states to do. Do they pay into the purse, provide some kind of counterpart funding, some kind of insurance scheme, that if anything happens in my state, I can hold NEMA, I can call them NEMA, and with all their expertise and with all the money that I've pumped into NEMA on a yearly basis to come to my aid. So these are the areas that we need to start investigating, interrogating. So you have talked about that. I know you also mentioned development of technology. What I would suggest, when you talk about your challenges, what I would suggest and advise that you work very closely, probably even closer than you've been working with the State House. The agency is directly under the Vice President. The Vice President is a man who has keyed very seriously into the agenda of Mr. President, which is the Renewed Hope agenda. And they're working in unison. And I believe if you work with the State House closely, we will be able to make a headway and do even more than you're already doing. NEMA is doing a good job, an incredible yeoman's job that I have known over the years. But there's room for improvement. And we are here to help you. And that's why we came physically, to know exactly what's on ground and what needs to be done. So maybe a comprehensive, short but comprehensive report, perhaps submitted to the Office of the Vice President through the Deputy Chief of Staff, and of course copied to me. We'll knock heads together. The budget cycle is coming around in the next couple of months. We'll be able to put heads together and know exactly what your priority areas are and what we can do to assist. So thank you again once more for the warm reception, and hopefully this will be we'll be turning the page with this administration. Thank you.
For emergency response. When in essence, part of their mandate is actually to coordinate emergency response, which includes several other entities, including the military, paramilitary agencies, and so on and so forth. And also to note that the funding they get has been significantly reduced by the fact that part of that funding is going directly to the states from the ecological fund. Each state is mandated to set up its own state emergency management, which is supposed to be literally the first responder. And in that respect, they're also supposed to have local government structure set up so that NEMA comes in essentially when the need arises. We have natural disasters in Nigeria are limited to essentially flooding, maybe 90–95%. Very few incidents outside flooding. And if we are aware of this, then I think we should also, just like most of the recommendations come up, encourage NEMA to focus on preparedness and prevention. I understand that that has been part of their hypothesis. But I know that there's a significant funding challenge based on the fact that their traditional source of funding has been eroded because most of this money is going directly to the states. And I know they are also inundated. NEMA, everybody calls for NEMA, including the state government. Some And I'm sure Chief will remember during the legislative days, not a day will pass when somebody will not raise a motion and include a NEMA response, including incidents of banditry that will border on security. I think the DG has a work cut out for her. I'm sure with the chief here, most of your issues will be given the attention they deserve. But I think we also need to help NEMA to alert the state of their responsibility towards the emergency response, so that everybody does his own bit. This is their season now. Once the rainy season comes, I equate NEMA with the Hajj Commission while we're going next. The whole, out of 12 months, the whole activities, 90% are concentrated in 2 or 3 months, essentially during the rainy season. So I feel for you. In fact, that's why we said we'll take a very little of your time, because we know that this is a peak period for you. Thank you very much. Just I hand over to the Chief.